I am Ray, and you are already in heaven. You are only dreaming that you are not. We never left the Garden of Eden. In the beginning, Adam and Eve were at one with God. They were living in paradise. Let us draw paradise. Here we go. Wow. Always the perfect weather, nice fruit. And they did enjoy this perfect life until one day a sinister little thing called a snake began speaking to Eve. God told Adam and Eve, eat from all the trees, all the fruit except the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Do not eat from that fruit, because if you eat it, you will die. And the snake came to Eve and it said, if you eat from this tree, you will not die. God is lying to you. Just try it. See what happens. And she did eat, and she gave Adam a piece of that fruit, and he too did eat. And they realized that they were naked. And so they covered themselves up with leaves, and they hid from God out of their shame. And God then came to them and asked, where are you guys? Why are you hiding from me? And they said, we are naked. And God replied, who told you that you were naked? Did you eat from the tree in which I directly commanded you not to eat? And because they ate, God then punished Adam and Eve and casted them out from the Garden of Eden, and they did fall and were cursed to toil and slave away and die during childbirth. And that, my friends, is called original sin, a curse that all human beings have suffered with since the beginning of time. Adam and Eve existed in unity with God. And unity with God is paradise. But because they ate from the tree of good and evil, what is that? Duality or separation. So they fell from one into two. Now, separation from paradise is what? It is hell. And that is why they were slaved to suffer. Everybody you have ever known and most people you will ever meet are suffering from this original sin. You see, this, as far as I can tell, is a representation of our human evolution. Adam and Eve represent the archetypal human beings, which means they represent mankind as a whole. Now, somewhere along the way, you might say, or you might hypothesize that, well, as you see with animals, most animals, as well as trees and plant life, they are at one with their environment. If you've ever seen a flock of birds, you see that there are really not individual birds, but they all act or fly as one. So too, a tree is one with its environment, and all animals, generally speaking, are one with nature. You see, the universe and all that is energy. We are all made of the same star dust. So in truth, we are all one. Everything in existence is the same one energy, merely vibrating at different frequencies of existence. And the frequency of existence determines the particular and unique shape in which that energy takes form. Now, this is theoretical. You could not possibly calculate the frequency of existence because it's infinite. There are an infinite array of different frequencies. But I guarantee that you do not experience this on a daily basis. Practically speaking, by definition, God is everywhere, always. And if God is everywhere, always, that means God is right here, right now, forever. Which means that God can never be separated from you. So that separation, what you call original sin, it is not real. It is an illusion. You cannot be separated from God. What happened to Adam and Eve is that they fell into illusion. All separation is an illusion. There is only one. Now, I often like to say heaven is synonymous with union, and hell is synonymous with separation. Separation from and union with God. But as we've discussed, separation is an illusion. Hell does not exist. You are already in heaven. You are only dreaming that you are not. In other words, this illusion, what is called the Matrix, is a dream, or what you might call a nightmare, that almost all human beings since the beginning of time have been trapped under. And here I am to wake you up. No more shall you live in this nightmare. No more shall you suffer. This is what it means to awaken, to escape the Matrix, and to be free from the cosmic delusion. Now, as far as I can tell, evolutionarily speaking, in the beginning, we were like all other animals. We were at one with our environment. Now, something I got from Jordan Peterson, and I believe there are studies on this, but I'm not exactly clear on what they are. For instance, they studied monkeys in places where they have evil predators that eat the monkeys. I don't know why I'm trying to draw this. In places where there are many snakes, many predators that eat the monkeys, they have greater eyesight and vision. In places where the monkeys have no natural predators, their vision is weak. Also, fruit. Human beings have developed strong abilities to detect colors, because the better you can observe a nice red ripe fruit, the more easily you will survive. The point of this is that through our encounters with predators, we gain awareness, and also with fruit do we gain heightened awareness. And with heightened awareness equals higher intelligence. And so basically speaking, you could make the hypothesis that through our interactions with fruit and with snakes, we have gained a heightened awareness and therefore have become a higher intelligence species. And so the story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden is our origin story as a human species. How we went from oneness with nature, with everything, into separation, because our sense of separation is determined by our brain's capacity to produce higher brainwave states or brainwave frequencies. Now, these brainwave frequencies come in a few types. Delta is when you are in deep sleep. Theta is when you are in dream or a deep meditative state. Alpha is just after waking, where you are relaxed. Beta is when you are awake and focused and alert. Gamma is like a religious experience or a spiritual experience. Now, these brainwave states I also call the different states of consciousness. As I mentioned earlier, the frequencies of existence, although specifically cannot be measured, maybe with AI one day, but they can, however, be generally categorized in these different categories. For instance, delta unconsciousness. You could say at the bottom level of delta unconsciousness, you have things like rocks. Remember, all is energy, so everything in existence is alive. Everything is vibration. But that which vibrates in delta consciousness is not vibrating fast enough for us to detect the life within. Therefore, when we see a rock, we do not say that it is alive. but that is only because we cannot perceive the life within it. However, at the higher end of delta consciousness, you might say, is something like a tree. A tree is almost like a rock. It's just sitting there doing nothing. But it's not doing nothing, it is doing a lot. A tree is conscious. It reacts to its environment. It is aware. But a tree cannot move. It cannot really do anything. As you increase in the frequencies of existence, in terms of animals in this case, once you enter into the theta realm, you get things like bugs and insects and fish and reptiles. You can see as you rise up in frequency, you also rise up in awareness. You know that a fish has a greater awareness than an insect. You also know that a mammal has a greater awareness than a reptile and a fish and an insect. And at the top of this spectrum, in fact, human beings are in the alpha state. You see, let's see if we can see this. As you go deeper, lower in consciousness, you return to unity. As you go higher in consciousness, you enter into separation. But then as you go even higher into consciousness, you return back to unity. So there is this brief spectrum in which we exist in separation. Now, the levels of consciousness determines how aware a particular being is. The levels of consciousness. There's a quote by an ancient Sufi mystic, I believe. Could be wrong. He says, God sleeps in the rocks, dreams in the plants, stirs in the animals, and awakens in man. Now, what has occurred? For whatever reason, through our human evolution, our brains develop the power to produce higher and higher brainwave frequencies. The telltale sign in which an animal has begun to awaken is the recognition of themselves, or self-awareness. In the theta brainwave state, we are still in this kind of milky oneness, in this dreamlike state. But in the alpha state and above, we enter into separation. How this manifests is that in our waking life, our conscious mind and the unconscious mind are completely separate. It's like there's a wall between our unconscious and the conscious. But as we go to sleep, as we go into a meditative state, that boundary, that wall begins to close and we merge back into oneness. And so, from your experience in the alpha and the beta brainwave state, we exist in a state of separation, meaning we feel ourselves to be a separate entity among separate objects in the world. This whiteboard is separate from me, this pen is separate, these lights are separate, every single thing is separate, other people are separate, we're all unique individuals. But as we have discussed, we are in truth all one. We all one. We are all the same one energy. Separation is an illusion. And so as we develop the ability to produce higher brainwave states, we entered into the illusion of separation, and we went from this dreamy milky oneness with nature, with everything, and we awakened into a nightmare. Why is it a nightmare? Well, if you have ever watched a documentary about nature, you will realize that nature comprises truly of two things, and that is sex and death. We awaken into this meat grinder of death, which is called samsara. An endless cycle of suffering. Because in the recognition that we were separate individuals in a hostile environment, we now were forced to focus on survival, and our whole existence is rooted in fear. Because we became aware that we could die, we became aware of the future, and that is why we were forced to toil and slave away. And you could even say that God punished woman to die during childbirth because our heads got bigger, because we got bigger brains. Who knows? Now there is a global awakening happening on this planet. You could say that humanity for the longest time has been existing in separation and suffering. And now we are returning back to unity. So from unity into separation, back into unity. You see, because if you're not conscious of being a separate being, if you get eaten by a bear, it's just something that happens. You're not really worrying about it so much beforehand. But once you're a separate being, you're now worrying about the bear all the time. We've been spending much time in alpha and beta, and now coming into gamma, super consciousness. In other words, people are waking up from this illusion. Right now is the greatest time in history to become awakened, to become enlightened, because thousands of people are sharing the same thing in which I am sharing with you now. The problem is that this information can only go so far. Because think about it, during your practical life, you still feel like a separate individual. No matter how much we beat the drum that we are all one, the moment you get cut off in traffic, the moment that somebody takes a little bit too long at the grocery store in line, the moment your boss scolds you for not doing something right, this goes out the window and you are immediately thrown back into this person did this thing to me, I'm upset, me. That is called ego. And so those who live from ego live in illusion. I don't think I mentioned the point that the mind is what gives us the illusion of separation. Again, because the mind produces the brainwave states that affect the way we experience reality, produces the sense of separation, which is not a bad thing. It gives us the ability to be unique, to have a sense of free will and individual autonomy. This is a necessary and beautiful part of our evolution. The only problem is it came with a very terrible unintended consequence. Or maybe it was intended. It just has a terrible side effect. That is, we in our daily life, we falsely assume that we are the ego. And that is what it means to be trapped in the illusion. The only prison in existence is our own mind. And this prison is made up of thoughts. And so what happens? The system that we live in, you could say the world system, you could call it the matrix, it does not matter. It takes advantage of your ignorance. And so long as you are ignorant of your true nature, the system can enslave you. So long as you are under this illusion, you are destined for slavery. I say the price of ignorance is slavery and death. Once you awaken to your true nature, there is no force in this universe that can enslave you. You are eternally free, and you have the power to create any life that you desire, regardless of your external circumstances. It does not matter what is happening in your life. You have ultimate power, but so long as you are ignorant, you do not have access to this power. And so what does this look like? It looks like most people in life living as a slave, living a life they did not choose, living a life to a system that does not care about them, in which its only purpose is to squeeze the life out of you. Every penny, every dollar, every ounce of energy that you have stolen from you simply out of ignorance. That is why people are called batteries in the matrix. Do you ever think how silly it is of all the people who have to slave away to work a job they don't like, barely able to make ends meet, while governments print out of thin air trillions of dollars? There is no more important mission than this: to wake up, to escape this system. Otherwise, death and slavery. Now, the source of the issue is ego. What is ego? Ego is personal identity. Everybody you have ever met simply assumes that they are the person they believe themselves to be. Think for a moment, if I ask you the question, who are you? If we were meeting for the first time, what would you say? I'll give you a moment. Many of us would list our hobbies, what you like to do on a daily basis. Maybe you might list your relationships. You might be a father or a mother or a sister or a brother or a son or a daughter. You might label off your religion. I am this kind of religious person. I'm a spiritual person, but not religious. You might label your job. I'm a banker. I'm a YouTube person. I'm a writer. You might like sports or something. The most obvious ones that we could see right away are with sports or with religion and with politics. People identify with sports, with politics, with religion. And you know people are in the grip of ego is when they get triggered. Meaning you say something about their religion, you say something about their sports, and you say something about their politics, and they get emotional. Whenever you get emotional about something, it means that you have an attachment to an identity. Now, of course, we are human. We get emotional about a lot of things. When we get triggered, it means we are attached to a certain kind of personal identity. Instead of emotional, I will just write triggered. I think it's a better way of putting it. When you listen to people watch a sports game, you say, our team, us. You did nothing. You did nothing. You have nothing to do with this at all. And yet people identify with their sports team. Neither did here. Rarely ever does anyone do anything. And yet for some reason we claim identity with these things. We say, yes, this is who I am. This is what I'm about. This is what I do. And we take pride in these things. In fact, we get most of our meaning from our ego identity. The only problem is, even the word person comes from the word persona, which means mask. The person we believe ourselves to be, our ego, is just a mask that we wear. It is not really us. How do we know this? It's because if you spent 90 seconds, you close your eyes, seconds. If you close your eyes and you try to find the person you believe yourself to be, where are they? I'll give you a moment. You can pause the video if you'd like. Where is the person you believe yourself to be in this moment now? You may have labeled off certain things of who you believe you are. Where are they? If they are true, you will find them, will you not? No, you will not. Our ego, our persona, the person we believe ourselves to be, is a construct created from memory and sense data. Only, you may say, okay, without moving your hands, where are you as a man or a woman? Where are you even as a human being? Don't open your eyes yet. Only when we open our eyes and look in the mirror and face other people do we say, yes, I am a man. I am a woman. I am a human being. This is the person I believe myself to be, because every other person in your life, every other ego is constantly pinging back and forth. I don't know what I was doing there. We're constantly telling each other, I will continue to reinforce the person you pretend you are, so long as you keep reinforcing the person I pretend to be. And so we can have fun in our little delusions together. Now, I am not here to destroy anybody's human delusion. For those who want to awaken, here I am. I do not want to awaken people who aren't interested. Because have you ever been woken from a nap before it was your time? But for those who are tired of suffering, who are tired of being a slave, and who wish to live a life of abundance, of peace, of love, of joy, to create any life that you desire, regardless of your external circumstances, this is for you. It is time to claim authority over your power and stop allowing yourself to be led into the ground by your ego. Now, the ego is an illusion. Unity is the truth. All that is required is for you to see through the ego delusion. Do not fight the ego. Fighting the ego, fighting the illusion, fighting the matrix, fighting the system. It's like throwing punches in a dark room and expecting something to happen. All you have to do is turn your face, turn your eyes toward the light, toward the truth. Through your awareness, through the light of your awareness, you will dissolve the darkness, the illusion, the ignorance of your ego. You must realize that you are already enlightened. You were born enlightened, but became endarkened through the conditioning of your experiences. That conditioning that created the ego. Shortly after my nephew was born, I guess after a year or so, he would call himself baby. And after about 2 years old, 2.5 years old, he started calling himself by his name. Why? Because his brain began developing a small amount of alpha waves. When we are children, we do not have brains powerful enough to create many alpha waves, and especially not beta brain waves. In the beginning, when we are newborns, we exist in delta consciousness. The primary state of the newborn's brain is delta. They are one with the mother. Babies exist in this dream-like state. Around the age of 2, I see they begin producing small amounts of alpha brainwave frequencies, which gives them a sense of individuality. This is what I think is responsible for the terrible twos. Children around the age of 2s are like little egos running around. How do they act? They say, I want what I want and I want it now. And if I don't get it right now, then I'm going to be upset and I'm going to throw a fit. Then, as far as I can tell, during the teenage years, let's say around the age 14, we begin developing beta brainwave frequencies, which gives us a stronger sense of individuality, which is why during this phase, teenagers are so rebellious. They are in their strongest era of separation. And on until our brains fully develop around the age 25, in which we are solidified in our identity for the most part. As it is said, many people die at age 27 and aren't buried until 70, because we live the rest of our lives in separation, in ego. That is why when you look at children, they are free. They remind us of what we lost in childhood. They have the spark in their eyes, a spark that we lose over time because we become a slave to the ego. We become separated from our true self, and separation is hell. Enlightenment is returning back to this childlike state with the wisdom of an adult. Because children, with their wisdom, they can't do anything with it. But us as adults, with this wisdom, become like a wise old man or woman, like a wizard. And this allows us to do a few things. We return to a state of peace, which is the default state. You do not need anything to be at peace, but you always need something to take away your peace. When we live from ego, we will never have lasting peace. Only temporarily, when that which blocks our natural peace is removed, is peace revealed for a short time. We do not experience this peace because the ego is fueled by desire. Only when we satisfy our desires is there a short burst of peace, and then once the desires return, so too the peace is lost. We return to a natural state of joy. Joy is not experienced because all of our desires and all of our aversions, the things that we try to avoid, because of these things, we are always judging our reality. We're saying life is not the way that I want it to be. And if life isn't exactly the way I want it, then I am not happy. So we tell ourselves, I'll be happy when. And this is the killer of all joy, of all happiness. You will not be happy in the future. If you are not happy now, you will never be happy, because the present moment is the only thing that is. Past and future are an illusion created by the ego. You shall be happy now. And also, we will return to a natural state of abundance. With the ego, because of our desires and aversions, we are always in a state of perpetual lack. When we live by our senses alone, we take the evidence of our outer environment as fact. Meaning, if you got the short end of the stick in this life, and you were born into a poor environment, you will see only poverty, and you will create more poverty. As it is said, for those who have, more will be given, and those who have not, even what little they have will be taken away, because you are not an ego. You are a divine creator. And you must take authority and recognize your true power if you want to live a purposeful, a meaningful, a fulfilled life. This is slavery. This is freedom. You must return to your original state. Align yourself with the truth. You are the source of all peace, all joy, all love, and all abundance. So long as you live from separation from ego, you will always be in a never-ending fight, a struggle to get these things. This is the cosmic joke that God has played on all of us. You already have all these things because you are the source of them. So we spend our whole lives trying to get what is already ours. That is why you are already in heaven. You are only dreaming that you are not. The true nature of what you are is called consciousness, or it's called the self. This is the divine essence of God that you are. You are this already. You can never be separated from yourself. It is only in our belief in the ego do we experience separation from our true self, from all the things we've ever desired. The ego is like a dark cloud that blocks out the light and the warmth of the sun. In the dissolution of the ego, so too the radiance of our true nature appears once again. That is peace, joy, love, and abundance. Now the way we dissipate the clouds and allow the sun to shine forth once again is we have to stop feeding the ego. As a divine creator, we have energy, and our mind is a tool that directs the flow of energy. Energy is the force of life. Energy is the force of creation. We are divine creators in which our mind is a tool to create our reality. If you are an ego, if you live from ego, you will unconsciously create your reality. As Carl Jung said, if we do not make the unconscious conscious, it will direct our life and we will call it fate. You must become a conscious creator by paying attention to where you allow your focus, your attention to drift. When you get triggered in life, most people will just react unconsciously. That's what it means to live in illusion. When you get triggered, you must stop and become aware. You must question the nature of why you are reacting this way. You must observe how you feel. Shine the light of awareness on your emotions, on your thoughts. Only the ego gets triggered, so when you inquire to the nature of why you are reacting this way, you begin seeing through the illusion of the ego. The more awareness you can cultivate, the more you will naturally stop feeding the ego through your reactions. During your daily life, pay attention to your thoughts. Through your thoughts, you reinforce the ego. This person did this thing to me. I'm resentful. I'm angry. I hate my life. All of the stories, all of the drama in your mind is ego. You begin to stop feeding this drama because it does nothing but create suffering in your life and keep you stuck in separation. You have to make the decision. Do you want to be free? Do you want peace, love, joy, and abundance? Or do you want your little stories? The stories that we tell ourselves about who we are and what we want and what we've gone through and all of the drama. You can have anything you want, but everything comes at a cost. So be careful about where you allow your attention to drift. But rather, if you want to become free as quickly as possible, you point your mind in one direction, and that is toward God. Because God is the source of all peace, all love, joy, and abundance, and that is also your true nature. And so the more you can open up a dialogue with God through prayer, asking for guidance, God will lead you to what is necessary to become free. You must have the desire for freedom. Most people are too busy focused with the world that they pay no attention to God. That is why most people, in order to become enlightened, in order to become awakened, your world must fall apart so that you stop wasting your time trying to find lasting satisfaction in a temporary world and begin pointing your mind toward God so that you can find lasting satisfaction in an eternal world. All that you desire, as Christ said, seek first the kingdom of God, and then everything will be added on to you. But you can gain everything of the world. You could satisfy all of your ego desires, and at the end of it, you will still be more miserable than when you began. The ego will never be satisfied. It will never be content. So long as you live from ego, you will live in suffering. The more we turn our attention toward God, the more we stop feeding the ego. Know that all of your worldly desires can be satisfied. Because oftentimes on this journey to freedom, we are told to give up all of our desires. But it is not exactly true. We have to give up our attachments to our desires because it is our attachments that keep us stuck to the ego, to the world, to suffering, to slavery. And once you give up your attachments and you seek only God, then all of your desires and more can be received. But think about it this way. If you want something, you are implying that you do not have it. So if you want peace, you are assuming that peace is not already yours. But when you focus toward God and you stop messing about with your desires, you become content, you become satisfied. And when you are content and you are satisfied, it means that you have your desires already. That is how you manifest, that is how you create the life of your dreams. This is an effortless process. When you live from your senses, when you live in the world, that is endless struggle as foretold in the story of Adam and Eve. When you return to God, that is effortless living, that is freedom. Let's touch upon this final point. Our mind is like a garden. Most people's minds are being overrun by weeds and thorns and poisonous trees that bear poisonous fruit. In other words, negative beliefs, negative identities, negative stories. And we as the gardener get to choose which plants we water and which plants we don't. When we feed the negative beliefs, when we feed the negative thoughts, the negative identities, when we say, oh, I'm such a terrible person, or I'm this way, or I'm that way, when we assume, if you say, I'm stupid, and I see this happen with a lot of people, they get sick and then they identify with their illness. I'm someone who has an illness. And then they make an identity around it. And once the identity is solidified, they continue to feed it. Oh, I am sick, I am sick, I am sick. I am stupid, I am stupid. I am not. And so they continue to feed these negative plants. And so the quality of their mind, the environment of their mind becomes toxic. It becomes sick. It becomes imbalanced. And whatever the quality is in our mind becomes reflected in our outer reality. Because we create what we focus on. Therefore, you want to start cutting away negative beliefs, negative self-talk, negative identities, negative stories. You catch yourself when you begin ruminating and you ask yourself, do I want to reinforce a negative life for myself? Or do I want to be free? And as you stop feeding this negative mind stuff, it begins to die. Because it cannot survive without the energy that you provide. That is why we are a slave to our own thoughts, to our mind, and we are the jailer. We enslave ourselves by willingly feeding all of this negative garbage. And then we suffer those experiences in our outer reality and are miserable. And what happens is as soon as you stop feeding all of this negative mind garbage, all the negative thoughts, the negative ideas, you begin paying attention to the thoughts that you think and the words that you speak on a daily basis. Your awareness alone will kill the momentum and stop the negative thoughts from running amok. And what happens over time, you stop feeding the negative plants and you start feeding the positive ones. The negative plants begin to die and the positive trees begin to grow. And over time, what you will find is that your mind is the Garden of Eden. It has just been overrun with garbage. Eternal sunshine of the spotless mind. The Garden of Eden is the purified mind. Perfection is the default state. It has just been covered up by the imperfection of the ego. I like to say, if you want more peace in your life, quiet the mind. If you want more love in your life, open the heart. And if you want to find God, do both. I am Ray. Much peace and many blessings. And remember, just be.